Welcome to Downloadable Content. My name is SJ.
And I'm Alex. We share the last name Herschel and are two down-to-earth guys bringing you notable content from the world of gaming.
Today we're going to talk about some troubling matters.
Let's get right into it.
Herschel. Herschel. Herschel.
What are you doing today?
Good. Tired, but good, because the weather is nice, and I've been riding my motorcycle to work like every day.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been good. It's fun. How
That's
about
good.
you?
Tired. I got one more day and then I'm done with the semester. I know I've been saying that for the last month, but one more day. All my final assignments and projects and exams are due tomorrow. So
Almost there.
get that done and we will be on our way to the summer.
Very good. Well, before we get into it, Mia sent in a comment on our YouTube channel congratulating Alex for his engagement.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mia. You're great. Tears of the Kingdom was leaked. It is out in the wild. I posted it in our Discord channel, but everybody be on the lookout. Spoilers beware. Hi everyone, this is SJ. Just so you all know, we recorded this episode before Tears of the Kingdom came out, so just so you understand, that's why we're talking about what we're talking about in this episode, because obviously Tears of the Kingdom is now out. So anyway, back to the episode.
Yeah. Go ahead and start us out.
Okay, so from what I understand, and maybe I don't have complete information, so if I'm missing something, please feel free to let me know. But my understanding is that copies of Breath of the Wild were shipped out early by some retailers.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Did I say Breath of the Wild? Tears of the Kingdom, yeah. So there are some copies floating out there, and people have dumped the game, the ROM, the digital file, and it's the game is out there now. You can pirate it technically. That's what's going on, and it's not good.
Yeah, it's that simple. So this is a problem in the gaming industry that we see all the time, is that there's lots of leaks of games.
This happened to Breath of the Wild too.
And it, in my humble opinion, it's going to kill the industry. Like, if this continues to happen for major releases, the video game industry will die.
I don't know if I agree with that. That'll necessarily kill the industry. For a couple of reasons. I'm not condoning this behavior in any way, to be clear. Let me be clear. But you've got, like, the people that can pirate it and play it early are people with powerful PCs that know how to do that stuff. I could do it if I wanted to today. I won't, obviously. So the number of people out, within Nintendo's target audience, I think is fairly minimal, although still significant. But I mean, the main reason why games are getting leaked is because retailers are shipping them out too early, right? So I don't think, I guess never say never, but I don't think we're really going to have a situation where the game leaks like months early, I think that kind of thing would be more catastrophic. But I don't know. What do you think?
So So this comes from my standpoint of being in pursuit of a business economics degree. So I'm still, learning the foundational concepts and stuff, but based off of what I've learned, this is incredibly concerning because when you're looking at quantity sold and prices that are set very specifically in order to, generate a very specific profit line, it's a very volatile equation when you're looking at what it takes to make a game a profitable investment. And in a lot of cases, quantities are targeted very, very specifically. And so when you have games that get pirated and are available for play for free or without purchase, and I mean, even if you're buying a pirated copy and you are purchasing it, but that money's not going to the company that made the game, it's a super dangerous thing and can very, very quickly turn very, very bad for a company. Now with Nintendo and their recent string of success, it's less concerning because of their staying power. But I mean, I feel like this is becoming more and more common. And so that's why it's concerning. Whereas if every major release is having this, it's going to get to a point where games are no longer profitable, or in order to be profitable, those games are going to get raised to $80, $90. And we've already seen how upset people were with the recent ups from $60 to $70 games for most AAA companies. And so just based off of that, very limited concepts of how economics work in markets where companies are competing with each other. And in this case, Nintendo, this is one of those cases where people, each video game developer tends to have their market, right? Like Nintendo has a different target audience than Sony does, and they have a different target audience than Microsoft. But at the same time, there is still a lot of overlap, and games are scheduled and targeted for releases on very, very specific days in order to make the most money possible.
Right.
Right? Like Zelda releasing in May 12th, that's not just a day that they were just like, oh, this is a good Friday. Like, there's been a pretty decent gap since the last big game release, and there's still a pretty big gap until, summer season comes in and they have a lot of games coming out. So this day was chosen very, very specifically. And so sort of working around that can be incredibly damaging to a company's financial status. And the longer that it goes on, the more extreme it's going to get, and the more we're going to see that companies aren't able to make returns on their investment for games, which means games are either going to be pushed out more at a lower quality, or consumers who are waiting and trying to be a bit more honest in their purchases will end up carrying that cost that comes from other people dealing dishonestly. But
I agree with everything you said. I think the main caveat here is that we don't know their profit margin.
Mm-hmm.
If we knew, and I don't know, maybe this is something you can look up, but if we knew how much of a margin there was per sale, that's one aspect of it. And the other is, okay, what percentage of their Switch game sales are pirated?
Mm-hmm.
Because without that information, there's really no way to determine how much this does or may not impact Nintendo. Because it straight up, like, just knowing the kind of people that are pirating this, I think it is more negligible than it is significant financially, because you have to consider the people that are doing that are people that are very in the know in the gaming industry, people like us that are up to date on gaming news all the time. Most people don't even know that the game is leaked.
Mm-hmm.
and when I say most people, like that's out of like Nintendo's core audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parents, younger kids, everything. And out of those people, it would have to be someone that has the know-how and capability of pirating it and running it on their PC. So I think that percentage out of the entirety of, all of Nintendo's sales and core demographic is very insignificant. But that's just my opinion, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing. But I do not think in the near future it's going to kill the industry by any means.
And that 100% makes sense. I think the problem is that a lot of times, because we don't have those specific sales figures and that data to understand, there's a lot more that goes into, okay, this product just paid for itself. Like, I'm sure, I mean, maybe not now with how successful the Switch has been, but during like eras like the Wii U, I'm sure that Mario Kart 8 and Super Smash Bros. 4 carried the Wii U, right? And made up for all the other products that had a loss of profit on it, right? Because they didn't sell well, they weren't received well, whatever reason.
If that, yeah.
And so if we're looking,
know if Wii U broke even, but.
And so if we're looking at it that way, right? Even if it might be insignificant for this game, we don't know exactly how significant that could be, because what if this is also supposed to cover 5 other games that don't do well because of how well Zelda will sell? And I think it's just, I know that a lot of people have issues with how controlling Nintendo is over their IPs and how strict they can be on things like copyright or however you want to get into it. Yeah. But having studied economics now, it makes sense, because like those losses in profit and ways for people to get access to stuff that most people are willing to pay for can be damaging if it's left to its own to just continue on. Right. So I mean, maybe saying that it's going to destroy the industry is a bit rash and a bit extreme. But I also am not going to count it out as a possibility, because if this were to have happened for, Elden Ring or God of War, or maybe it did, or for whatever reason, but if it continues to happen and the issue just becomes more and more prevalent, I mean, the more exposure there is to it, the more people will learn how to pirate it. Because at the end of the day, if people have the opportunity to take something like this for free, not everyone will, but more and more people will get accustomed to the fact that they can, which I believe will lead to more people doing it. And so I think it's just setting a really bad precedence now where, it can go bad very, very quickly, and we'll see what happens. It's
definitely a concerning trend, and piracy has been a thing for decades at this point too. It has been an issue for a very, very long time, and despite that, the gaming industry is bigger now more than ever, and its growth took place in the midst of the issue of piracy, and gaming publishers have been struggling with that for a very long time. So I don't think it's that big of a concern, but I do agree that it's like somebody is going to pay for that one way or the other, right? And we don't really know whether that's going to be in the form of top millionaire execs at Nintendo getting a slight bonus cut, in which case, okay, boo-hoo, or 2, if it's going to mean prices of video games are going to increase, or whatever thing, are we going to have to eat that cost? Who knows? But but I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah. And I think those percentages are completely key to understanding how devastating or negligent it may be, just because, you study economics and business. I look at business financials all day, every day. And, I think we have a pretty good background on that. But,
yeah.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. So just be careful as you're out there getting excited for Tears of the Kingdom. As of this time of recording, we are 10 days out.
Yeah, in fact, I would recommend not searching anything Tears of the Kingdom related, because you might have a thumbnail pop up or something, right? And it would just be safer that way.
To be honest, usually even with these leaks, when it does come to video game leaks, I've found that, like, even if you do search things up, a lot of times, like, people are very, very cautious. Like when this thing happened for Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, if it's a creator you trust.
Right. I was still able to make it through to release day, even looking at a lot of different stuff, because, like, everybody was like, okay, step away now if you don't want to see.
Right.
Okay, step away now.
Right.
Okay, this is like your 5th chance. Like, don't look any further. You're going to see something. So, be careful, obviously, right? You might end up seeing some things, and, just know that it's out there.
Yeah, tread carefully, and that's true. Especially if you're sticking to the creators that you trust, you should be okay.
Yeah. But, with this one, with this issue, we see that there's an issue of something coming out before it was supposed to. And we have another issue that recently happened where...
Can I just say one more thing?
Go for it.
Like you said, Nintendo is really hard on really rough with their... Not rough with their IPs. They're very protective of their IPs. In this situation, though, I would like to see legal action taken against these retailers that are prematurely sending games out, because ultimately it is their responsibility. Like, they are the reason why this is happening.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what precedents or laws are in place for that. I mean, it would make sense if they're there, but I also don't know of anything that, like, sticks out as like, yeah, this is like legally punishable.
There's got to be some contract.
There's got to be,
because
right?
Otherwise Amazon would be sending it out right now.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I was just transitioning. Do you have anything else to say on Tears of the Kingdom before we move on?
No.
That's good. So here we see that, something came out before it was supposed to, something before it was designed to be released to the general public. But we have a different issue that many people are considering to be something being released too soon and much before it was ready to be released. And that is the recent release of Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Oh, man.
You have a lot to say on this, so I will
I've got a mouthful
hand it over to you for a sec.
I am so sick of this trend in the industry where it's the mindset of get that game out now, because people are pre-ordering, people are going to buy it day one, and then fix the game later. It's so bad. I mean, imagine, right? You're going to see one of your favorite movie franchises. You go to the movie theater, you sit down with your popcorn and everything, you're excited, you're with your family, friends, whatever, and the movie starts, and, like, it's not even properly edited, or there's, like, glitches. I mean, it would be an absolute outrage. Or you go and buy, a pair of ski pants, and it does not function as ski pants. It lets all the snow in. Why is this okay? And the answer to that, to be honest, is because people are buying it. So, like I've said many times before, we vote with our money, right? There's a reason why I never, and I mean never, pre-order any game except Zelda franchises, Zelda games. Because I know that Zelda, that team, will polish that game, even if it takes 10 years to do so before they release anything. And every other publisher these days seems like they don't care about that. Because they know that people are going to pay, and people have pre-ordered. They're going to get their money anyway, and the sooner you get your money, the more valuable that money is. So obviously, in terms of profitability, it makes sense to pump that game out and fix the game later. There is no way that they don't know about these issues. And the issues about the game are... Sorry, there's like a little buzzing in the background, but we're just going to ignore it. Guys. It's terrible frame rates. These are on like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and PC. PC, I think, is the worst, but there's issues on all platforms. And I mean, people with RTX 4090s are like barely getting 30 FPS, right? Like for any of you that know like PC stuff and graphics card stuff, like that's absolutely ridiculous. It's just not optimized. It's not finished.
Yes. And so before this episode, I told you that we were going to have a differing opinion on something. And this is where that's going to come out. So just give me a sec to say my spiel. I want to start off by saying that the fact that the game is seemingly unfinished is, yes, absolutely a problem. However, one thing that I've learned recently is that just about every company that puts out products, whether that's physical or digital, so that includes, any game that's released for any company that's like more than just like an indie developer, has strategists and people that are trained to find out when to release games.
Right.
And so, similarly to how I mentioned that Tears of the Kingdom is specifically planned for May 12th, whoever the strategists over at EA are that decided that Jedi Survivor needed to come out when it came out, put a lot of work and a lot of research into designing that day. And when we look at it, right, if they release it later, they're in the middle of Zelda hype and are frankly going to lose sales. We don't know how much they would have lost if they had to compete directly with Tears of the Kingdom or whatever, but it's there.
Sorry, keep going. I'm going to try to fix it.
No worries, go ahead. And so my point in sharing this is not to excuse that the game is unfinished, because obviously you don't want that to happen. However, I also understand why it happens, and maybe not in this scenario because EA is notorious for having very money greedy policies and practices when it comes to their games. But I think it makes sense why the game was released in the state that it was, because if they miss their window, who knows what happens to their, success level with the product. And luckily now we're in a state where that game can be patched later, and obviously that's not the ideal solution. But I mean, if we're talking about like overall sales, obviously you want to release a game in a finished state, because that's going to help with word of mouth. People are going to play that game and then say, oh my goodness, this game is so good, go buy it. And that's, going to increase their sales. People are going to want to play it off of recommendation. And so if companies are putting it out in this state where they're losing that market, because I don't think anybody that's played Jedi Survivor is going out and recommending it to people right now.
Yeah.
Because it's not in a state to be played. So I know that I'm on record in the past for having said things like, just delay the game, just guys, delay it.
Buzzing noise is kind of annoying.
Just delay the game, just wait, we'll still buy it later. I think I've realized now that that's not very realistic, I think, because just imagine that they delay it by a month. Like Tears of the Kingdom will have come out 2 weeks earlier. Like, who's going to be looking for another expansive world building game? They seem to have a decent amount of crossover in their audience and their markets and stuff. And so I just think, I think now over the last 6 months or so, as I've learned more about how companies release products, I don't think this is as greedy of a move as I used to think it was. I think that honestly, these companies are in a pretty tight spot where they kind of have to put it out in order to find success, because the longer you put into a game's development time, the more money you're putting in, and frankly, your profits are going to drop. And so I don't know in this case how much, it was just get the money now, fix it later, or it was, well, our hands are tied. Like, if we don't release it now, like half of us are going to lose our jobs. We don't know, because we don't get that information from companies.
Right.
But I do think it's
fair.
Possible. And I mean, I look at other companies like CD Projekt Red is a game company that, had a very good standing with their consumers, and then after a lot of time put into a specific game, they released it and it came out in a broken, buggy mess. And this is a company that, historically has been about the experience, not about their profits.
Oh, yeah.
And even then they fell into the same trap. And so I think that's an example of a point where, like, for whatever reason, their hands were tied and they had to release it in a less than ideal state and had to fix it later. And so, yeah, I guess, does that make sense where I'm coming from?
I understand where you're coming from. I wholeheartedly disagree, but I understand where you're coming from. So I think here are some other things to consider. What is the cost of delay, and what is the cost of losing goodwill with your customers and bad publicity through reviews? People say there's no such thing as bad publicity. I don't think that's true. And I don't know what it is.
Sorry, guys. We'll get this figured out by the next episode, but hopefully you can...
Should we take like a quick second? Like kind of unwind some of this stuff?
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll be right back.
A few moments later.
All right, let's try this again.
Okay, we're back. So let's try this again. The reason... So yeah, a couple of the things to consider. What would their sales have been? What would their sales have been, if the game was completely polished and it got really good reviews and outlets loved it and it came alongside Breath of the Wild or 2 months after Breath of the Wild? I don't know. And I understand that release dates are picked very strategically. I'm sure a lot of people at EA, their hands are tied, but there are a few people that are the key decision makers that do have the power to delay it.
Mm-hmm.
And consider Tears of the Kingdom or almost any Zelda game. I mean, they delay their games all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Their very first release date, when they say, it's going to come out summer of 2018 or whatever, that was strategically chosen as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when that time comes around, the game isn't quite finished, right? Just think about what would have happened to the brand as a whole if they just released it anyway because, we're sandwiched by 2 big game releases.
Mm-hmm.
So just choose a new date strategically that works well financially. I think that is a much better answer for the consumers, for the company and their profits. I think overall that is more of a win-win-win because either way, you're going to put the time and effort and money into fixing that game anyway, right? You're going to have to patch it anyway.
So yeah, and that 100% makes sense. But again, consider, what if that company needs money now? I think it depends on development time, on the overall state of a business. But if I'm going to if I have a product and it needs 3 months more of development time, but I don't have 3 months financially to make it to that point where it'll be financially successful, I need that money now. And so it makes sense to me that a company would say, okay, give me that money and then that finished product will be delivered eventually. Obviously, I don't think that's
their... So explain that to me a little bit. Like, what do you mean they can't afford to, like, cash flow wise? Like, they need the funds away to keep operating? You've
got developers that need to be being paid. You've got marketing and shipping prices that need to be either delayed and canceled. I think there's so many things that go in to producing a game that I've tended to overlook and not recognize. If the same amount of money is going to be put in and it's still going to take the same amount of time, sure. But if you can get an advance on that, and that advance will enable you to reach the final product where you're able to gain more profit in the long run, like, it makes sense why companies are doing that. Because at the end of the day, the final product is being delivered to the expectation that they want, and they were able to do it in a way where they were able to make it. I think we just see a lot of games get canceled because they don't have that cash flow coming in because people aren't giving them money for an unfinished game. And because of that, those games end up being canceled because people are like, well, at this point, we're not going to be able to get enough people to play this game where it makes sense to put the money into making it. And so we just need to cut the losses and move on to something else where we are going to be able to make money. So again, it's hard to really say since so much of that financial data is not open to the public. But I think that for some situations, it's entirely possible that that's why these types of things happen.
So that makes sense. And if that is the case, and that's why Jedi Survivor came out in the state that it did, then I don't blame them for needing to do that, right? Because obviously it's better to have the company running soundly with decent cash flow and fix the problem later than to have operational issues.
Right.
But
therein lies a problem because the company can't come out and say, hey, buy this game that's broken, it's going to be fixed in 3 months. Like, you can't do that. And so what companies do is they sell something that they know is faulty, hoping that eventually, they'll get it to a point where it is acceptable. But like,
that was
sorry. So like financially, it makes sense. But like, as far as like ethics are concerned, yeah, like companies are still being dishonest about a state of a game, which, brings in its own problems of how do you handle that, right?
Financially, it may make sense, right? It only makes sense in the situation that you described.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that they don't have the necessary cash on hand to keep things going before they get the revenue. But like, if you're like, that is a possibility, but I don't believe that EA is in that situation. And if they are, they're running their business terribly because they are massive. They're one of the biggest AAA developers. And if they don't have the cash on hand to delay one of their biggest games for a few months or even a year or whatever they need to do, they have other income streams too, right? So if they are unable to do that, then they have a lot of issues that they need to take care of, like right away. Because that's not sustainable. And I do not believe that that's the state that they're in. With as big as they are, they've got to have reserves for stuff like that. If Nintendo can do it, EA can do it. Right? Nintendo has delayed a Zelda game for years. Like, years. And, I mean, Jedi Survivor isn't, absolute dog water, but it needs to be optimized. It's more performance than glitches. Actual gameplay and everything, from what I've heard anyway, is decent. So I think what you're describing is very valid. I'd be willing to bet my money that is not applicable to EA's situation here. And so, with the assumption that they do have the necessary cash on hand to delay the game and run the business soundly, even financially for the business, right? It is better, in my opinion, to polish the game, get it good, and then release it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cases where, go ahead. Sorry.
Because more people will buy the game. More people will buy the game. I'm pretty sure about that. Because think about it, right? Like, now this game is dropped. It's gotten really bad publicity all over the place. Tears of the Kingdom is coming out next Friday. People are going to pick that up. And I mean, just consider the fall off of Cyberpunk, right? Like, that initial release is so important that if you just get it right later, months down the road, that hype isn't going to be there. Like, a lot of people are going to forget about it. You don't have the advertising power of people on social media talking about the game releasing and stuff like that. And I guess that's kind of speculation territory, but
yeah, I mean, I guess it depends because I mean, you recently played No Man's Sky, and at this point, No Man's Sky is a success. It wasn't when it launched.
Yeah,
they got a lot of money and pissed a lot of people off. But at this point, with the upgrades that have been given and how they found a way to monetize those upgrades in a way that seemed fair to the consumer, it's profitable. So I guess it's just one of those situations where, because there's so much that we don't know, it's hard to tell. And obviously, I don't think anybody wanted Jedi Survivor, including the people at EA. I don't think they wanted the game to be released the way that it is.
Especially the people that are actually working on the game, right?
Right, like
I'm
why
sure they didn't want to release
why
it
would
like
they
that.
want to be noted with something that's, for lack of a better word, a disappointment at this point? And so, who knows? But
Who knows?
I think there's potential for the game to recover. I hope it does, because if I end up being able to get a PS5 anytime soon, I'd love to play Jedi Survivor if it ever gets to a state where, you know, it's worth buying. So
Yeah. And for you, the listeners, regardless of how these companies are doing, I don't know about you, but it would be my personal advice to never pre-order a game. Just don't. Unless you are 100% certain that you can trust, you know, that game development company to release it in a state that would be desirable to you, which is why I only pre-order Zeldas.
yeah, I think the only games that I've ever pre-ordered have been Zelda and Smash.
Yeah.
I don't think I've
wait
ever
for the
pre-ordered any other
reviews. Yeah.
There you go.
Let us know your thoughts about it. Do you agree with, you know, one of us more than the other, or do you have completely other thoughts? Maybe you have insider knowledge. Reach out to us on all of our social media.
Yeah. Have you been burned by Jedi Survivor's release? We want to hear all about it. So once again, thank you to Mia for commenting on our YouTube episode. We love to get comments from our listeners. You can go ahead and do that on YouTube or on the episodes themselves or through our email. All that info will be available.
And also, one of our listeners reached out and said, hey, where's the Discord link? All of our social media and Patreon links are all in the description of every single episode, so you can find it there.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you again for listening to us. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Yeah.
All right. Love you guys. Enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom. Next
10
Friday.
days.
I
10
took work off. So.
Bye, guys.
All right. See you.